I finally watched the new Fate movie. This must be what heaven feels like. I immediately regret that pun. You know, back when they announced the Unlimited Blade Works TV adaptation, I was a little bit disappointed. I mean, sure, I still look forward to it, but as it was already adapted into a rather mediocre movie once, I expected the next Fate anime to be an adaptation of Heaven's Feel. It would have made sense as it is much closer to Fate Zero than the other two routes. Luckily, they announced a Heaven's Feel movie trilogy shortly afterwards. But while I was somewhat relieved, I was also a bit worried. Are 3 movies really enough to adapt the entire route? Wouldn't 25 episodes be better to work with? Well, now that I watched the movie, I'm much more confident. One thing I should mention is that this movie does assume that you already watched at least the Unlimited Blade Works adaptation. I mean, obviously everything is better if you read the visual novel. This movie series is not meant to stand on its own. This is something that applies to all Fate Stay Night adaptations. It is based on a visual novel with 3 different story paths after all, that complement each other, and this is even more so the case with this movie. I would recommend to watch at least Fate Zero and Unlimited Blade Work, though I would also recommend to watch the Dean adaptation of the Fate route for some good measure, but the other 2 Ufotable shows are pretty much required this time around. A lot of interaction between Rin and Shiro, for example, were cut, but if you watch Unlimited Blade Works, you can at least guess what she is up to, and it is implied that they talk more off screen. They also don't really bother with character introductions. You are supposed to be familiar with everyone after all. If you don't know them already, you are probably wondering why you should care about any of them. It also tried to avoid showing stuff we already saw in the first couple of Unlimited Blade Works episodes, as episodes 0 and 1 of that show take place before the story paths diverge. A lot of the stuff that happened in those 2 is skipped, or we get to see what happened in the meantime at another place. The most important events like the summoning of Saber and her battle with Lancer, for example, are part of a montage during the opening credits, and yeah, gotta point it out here, for said montage they recycled footage from UBW. But I can't really blame them for that. But before we actually get to that scene, this movie opens with some original content that was only alluded to in the visual novel. It goes back to Shiro's first year at high school and how he first met Sakura, the main heroine of this route and therefore this movie series. And we get to see how they form a bond over time. I think this is a pretty great way to show longtime fans something new, and it does a good job establishing their relationship. It also adds a little bit of nuance to Shinji's character, though I think they could have done a bit more with him in that sequence, as he is mostly delegated to the background. It also drags on a little bit longer than it needs to, as it contains multiple time jumps, to a point that it could be considered padding after a certain point. I still think it's a great addition though. They also shuffled some scenes around and combined others to save some time. Sadly, this also applies to most scenes with Ilya that, according to the director, were pushed back into the second movie. He gave an interview after the screening I visited. As a result, some things feel a little bit off. For example, their first encounter with Ryder suddenly happens shortly after they fought Berserker. Like, it is still the same night. It doesn't really bother me that much, but it is a little bit hard to buy. Now, obviously, changes like that are necessary. Even with 3 movies, Heaven's Feel doesn't have as much time as UBW had, with 26 episodes, of which 3 were 40 minutes long. And even that show had to cut some corners. But for the most part, it feels rather natural, and I think this movie does benefit from the somewhat tighter pacing. Admittedly, one thing that suffers a little bit in the process are the fight scenes, though only if you directly compare them to UBW. Heaven's Feel in general is less action orientated and more horror for the most part. The first couple of fights are over rather quickly. UBW had the freedom to extend them a bit to make them more entertaining. In this movie, the first fight between Saber and Berserker therefore just seems a bit lacking in comparison. It still looks gorgeous though, and they make up for it by extending other fight scenes. And they are simply amazing. So while there is not as much action as in the TV show, don't worry, you'll get your fix. No, I don't want to spoil too much in regards of the story if you are not familiar with it. Not to mention that I would rather talk about the story in its entirety and not just the content of part 1. If you liked Unlimited Blade Works, you will also like this one. If you were a little bit disappointed by UBW because it felt too disjointed from Fate Zero, you might like this movie more as it feels more like a sequel to that show. Fates Unite Heaven's Feel Part 1 Presage Flower is a wonderful movie, and if you are a fan of the Fate series, you have to watch it as soon as you can. Or you wait until all 3 parts are available. But if you are a Type Moon fanboy like me, you're probably not that patient. And now excuse me, I have to watch some Fate Extra. Please like, share and subscribe, and also consider to check out my Patreon. And most importantly, stay foxy.